how good is Sergey Kovalev? Is there anyone out there that can beat him? Is there anyone out there that can even be competitive with him? There's a lot of names that boxing fans are throwing around at the moment. People like Adonis Stevenson, Pascal, Froch, Gennady Golovkin, Andre Ward. These are the names people are talking about. Some people are even talking about Kovalev moving up to cruiserweight to get a challenge up there. But before I get into some of the names that I've just mentioned and how I think Kovalev would do against those guys and how viable I think those fights are, let me just address a few of the things that people mentioned in the comments to my post-fight video. Now, a lot of people were talking about Kovalev's footwork, his use of the jab, his ability to cut off the ring, and his boxing skills. And they were very impressed. They didn't think Kovalev could box that well. They think he proved himself to be a very, very good boxer as well as a puncher. Jose Silva, who's a long-time YouTube friend of mine, also mentioned the fact that Kovalev had longer arms. And he used those longer arms very, very effectively in the fight. And the two things I definitely agree with is Kovalev proved he's excellent at cutting off the ring. Very, very good at cutting off the ring. He didn't chase Hopkins around. He cut the ring off, you know, and he kept Hopkins under slow, steady pressure. He fought to a very, very clear strategy. It was obvious going in, you know, just from the first couple rounds that he wasn't going to go and try and bomb out Hopkins early like a lot of people expected him to, because that would have been playing into Hopkins' hands, especially early in the fight when Hopkins is fresh. That's when he can catch you with them counters. That's when he dropped people like Joe Calzaghe who came rushing at him. So Kovalev knew that he had to avoid walking into Hopkins' traps. Him and John David Jackson came up with an excellent strategy of applying slow, steady pressure and using that extra, you know, those longer arms. And that did surprise me. I expected Hopkins to at least have as long arms as Kovalev, if not longer. But it was actually Kovalev that had the longer arms. And he was able to keep Hopkins at the end of that reach. And anytime Hopkins came in, Kovalev would just take a little half step back. And it was actually quite reminiscent of what Vladimir Klitschko did against David Haye. Because Klitschko applied steady pressure. I mean, I think Kovalev's performance was better than Klitschko against Haye. But nonetheless, it was a similar strategy in the sense that Klitschko was keeping Haye under steady pressure in the same way with the jab, keeping Haye at the end of the shots. And when Haye would come forward, Klitschko would just take a step back, you know, a little half step back, and David Haye would fall short. And that's exactly what was happening with Hopkins. Obviously, Hopkins don't have the explosive speed of Haye, but he's all round a better fighter than Haye when we're talking about pound for pound. But anyway, yes, Kovalev's ability to cut off the ring, his jab, very, very good. In terms of, and you know, his footwork and whatnot. In terms of his all-round boxing skills, my opinion of his all-round boxing skills hasn't changed. I always said that Kovalev has good, sound, solid boxing skills, but nothing exceptional. And that hasn't changed. Hopkins has exceptional boxing skills, but he didn't use those skills, at least not his offensive boxing skills, because he was afraid of getting hit with a clean shot. It was just that simple. Kovalev was able to cut off the ring and do this and that with him. But if Kovalev didn't have the kind of power that he does, he would have had a lot more trouble with Hopkins, because Hopkins would have taken more risks and taken more chances and come forward and changed up his strategy when one strategy wasn't working. But Hopkins' mind was so focused on not getting hit that he really didn't get any type of offensive game going at all. He was afraid to commit to punches. So Kovalev does have good skills, but he's not a master counterpuncher like Marquez. You know, he's not going to slip and block and counter like Floyd. He's not a guy with an all-round game like Andre Ward. He don't have skills like that. He's not a Guillermo Rigondeaux. He does have skills, but his skills are good and good enough combined with the power that he has to make him an exceptional fighter. But if you take away that power, you've got a good, solid fighter, but nothing exceptional. Whereas guys like Floyd, Ward, Hopkins, these type of fighters, they don't have the power that Kovalev's got, but they're still exceptional fighters because their skills are exceptional. I don't see Kovalev as having skills like that. And just to reiterate that point, if you put Kovalev in Hopkins' position, in there against a bigger, younger, stronger guy, who he doesn't really have the power to make a dent in, and who's pushing him back and bullying him and has the longer arms. Do you think Kovalev, if he was in Hopkins' position, do you think Kovalev would have had the skills to slip and slide and last the 12-round distance? I don't think so. Most fighters don't have that type of skills to go the distance like Hopkins did against such a formidable puncher. Most fighters don't have that kind of skills, those kind of skills. And I don't think Kovalev does either. I think if he was in Hopkins' position, he would have got stopped like, 95% of fighters would. So yes, Kovalev has good sound boxing skills. Nothing exceptional though. All right, that's just my opinion. There wasn't anything overly scientific about what he did. He wasn't setting up specific punches and, catching him with specific counters and this, that, and the other. It was all fairly methodical, basic stuff. But he's very well schooled, like most of the Eastern Europeans are, and he did what he had to do. Okay, but it wasn't overly scientific. So yeah, he's a very good all-round fighter, but it's his power that makes him exceptional. And in terms of the opponents who may be able to be competitive with Kovalev, let's start off with the smaller guys, Andre Ward, Golovkin, and Froch. In my opinion, and this may shock some people, in fact, it probably will shock most of you. In my opinion, the guy who has the best chance of beating Kovalev out of those three is actually Golovkin. And not just because of the fact that Golovkin sparred with Kovalev and apparently dropped him or knocked him out. Not just because of the fact that Golovkin was a much better amateur than Kovalev. Not just that, but also the fact that I think, these Eastern European guys, they know each other from the amateurs. They know the reputations. And Abel Sanchez, who's Golovkin's trainer, said that Kovalev was intimidated in the sparring sessions with Golovkin. And I think that intimidation may cause Kovalev to fight within himself and not really express himself in the ring against Golovkin. I think he might have too much respect for Golovkin if they were to fight. I think physically he has the tools to beat Golovkin. I think Golovkin's got a much better chin, but Kovalev's got the longer arms and I think the better boxing skills. But that psychological aspect, I think, could play a factor if they do fight. But at the moment, and I'd be picking Golovkin in that fight, by the way. If Golovkin fights Kovalev at this stage, say it happens in 6 months, at this point in time, I'd be picking Golovkin. If the fight happens 2 years down the line, a lot can change in 2 years. Fighters can change, their fortunes can change, their form can change. So I'm not talking about 2 or 3 years down the line. I'm saying if the fight happened in 6 months, I'd pick Golovkin for the reasons I just mentioned. But I can't see that fight happening for now because Golovkin's at 160. He's 2 weight divisions below. And at the moment, he doesn't have any ambition to move up even to 168, never mind 175 or a catch weight. So I think we can probably put that fight on the back burner. As far as Andre Ward, again, people are going to be shocked by this, but at this point in time, I would actually pick Kovalev to beat Andre Ward. As shocking as that is, I'd actually pick Kovalev to beat Ward. Ward does have the better boxing skills, the better all-round game. But in a sense, Ward is Bernard Hopkins 2.0. He's the younger, fresher, quicker version of Bernard Hopkins. He can really move, faster feet, very good on the inside, a bit more versatile on the inside as well than Hopkins. But I see it being a similar fight to the Hopkins fight. I think that Kovalev may well be able to contain Ward. Ward has the skills, but if he's afraid to throw punches, then what good are his skills? He'll just be showing his defensive skills rather than his offensive skills. If he's intimidated the way I think he would be intimidated by Kovalev's punching power. And especially after the layoff that Andre Ward has had, a lot of inactivity. At this point in time, I would pick Kovalev to beat Andre Ward. Again, people are going to be shocked by that, but that's just my opinion. And as far as Carl Froch, I don't think Carl Froch would last 8 rounds with Kovalev. Froch gets hit clean in every fight he's in. Without a shadow of a doubt. This guy always gets hit clean. Guys like Andre Ward, he don't get hit clean. Froch always gets hit clean. you know, and people have got very, very short memories, because I've seen some people online saying, oh, Froch could beat him, or Froch should be competitive against Kovalev. I don't see it. I think Froch gets absolutely wiped out because he was down in the first round and hurt badly by George Groves, and Groves is nowhere near the puncher that Kovalev is. And he don't have the jab that Kovalev has. He don't have the ability to cut off the ring that Kovalev has. Kovalev is bigger and stronger than Groves, better jab, and Groves showed in the first fight with Froch that the way to beat Froch is to push Froch back. That's the way to beat him. If you allow Froch to come forward, or if you fight Froch in the center ring, you better have longer arms or significantly quicker feet than Froch, because Froch has got very long arms and he has a nice jab that he throws out there. And Groves found out in the rematch that fighting Froch in center ring is not as easy as pushing him back. Even though pushing him back is more physically demanding, fighting him in center ring is difficult because Froch has got a very, very long jab. You know, Groves would have been better off in a rematch doing the same thing that he did in the first fight, pushing Froch back, but sporadically taking walks around the ring to, you know, catch his breath. But he would have been better off sticking to a similar strategy that he had in the first fight of pushing Froch back, because it takes a lot of Froch's power away. Kovalev has a much better skill set in terms of cutting off the ring and attacking than George Groves does. So I've got no doubt that Kovalev would be able to push Froch back, keep him on the back foot. And Cole Froch has always had a poor defense. He always gets hit clean. I don't see Froch lasting the distance. In fact, the fight will probably be over in 4 rounds, and Kovalev will probably stop him inside 4. But that fight's never going to happen, because Froch has had many opportunities to move up to 175, but he's always said that he has no intention of doing so. Froch is actually not a very big super middleweight. The guy makes 168 pretty comfortably. So there's not really any realistic chance of him moving up to 175 and fighting Kovalev. Certainly not the way Kovalev is destroying people. I know Froch is a warrior. There's no doubt about that. Froch is a warrior, but he knows his limitations. He's not going to go in there with Kovalev. That's just not going to happen, especially not at this stage of his career. So we can scratch that one off the list. Now, as far as the light heavyweights, we got guys out there like Pascal, Stevenson, and even Artur Beterbiev, who apparently beat Kovalev in the amateurs. Now, out of those 3, I think that Beterbiev has got the best chance of beating Kovalev. But Beterbiev, even though he just beat Tavoris Cloud, it's unlikely that he'd be in the ring with Kovalev anytime soon, because he's only had, what, 5-6 fights? And I know they are moving him quickly, but even so, to put him in with Kovalev at this stage, why do it after only 5 or 6 fights? So I can't see his management taking that risk at this particular point. Although down the line, if Kovalev's still at the top, you can probably expect to see Beterbiev fight Kovalev. Interestingly enough, Beterbiev is based in Canada, and he spars a lot with Pascal, which is pretty interesting. But we can put that fight on the back burner for now. But if Kovalev is still at the top when Beterbiev gets into position, that could be a tremendous fight. And Beterbiev, the thing about him is, he's huge. I mean, Kovalev is a nice size light heavyweight. Beterbiev looks like a damn cruiserweight in there. He's huge. That's the thing I noticed in the Tavoris Cloud fight. This guy's massive for a light heavyweight. God knows how he makes the weight. That would be a very interesting fight between Beterbiev and Kovalev. I think Beterbiev would have the best chance out of any of the light heavyweights out there at the moment. And as far as Pascal, I think Pascal, with his speed, his explosiveness, his awkwardness, the ambush style that he has the potential to give Kovalev some problems. I think he's got the power to hurt Kovalev, but his stamina is so poor, Pascal. He's got very, very poor stamina. He always gasses out late in fights. Even in that fight that he had with Lucien Boutte, he was gassing out late in the fight, putting his hands up, taking shots against the ropes, against a guy who he had dominated for 12 rounds. Why was he doing that late in the fight? This guy really has appalling stamina. So even though he might be awkward early for Kovalev, Kovalev's shown an excellent ability to cut off the ring. And I think he'd eventually catch up with Pascal late in the fight and probably take him out late. Early in the fight, yeah, Pascal with his erratic movement and jumping in and out with big shots, he might be able to give Kovalev some issues. But the longer it goes, I think the better it will be for Kovalev. But, you know, it's still a competitive fight early on with Pascal's speed and movement. It's still competitive. And Pascal's a tremendously strong man as well, very physically strong. So he would be able to manhandle Kovalev in the clinches. I'm not saying he's going to have it all his own way, but he'll certainly be able to compete in terms of strength up close. An interesting fight, but I would definitely pick Kovalev in that one. And last but not least, Adonis Stevenson. Now, this is a fight which I've been going back and forth about in my head for ages now. And I keep going from favoring Stevenson to favoring Kovalev to favoring Stevenson to favoring Kovalev. And I'm going to do it again because right now, after this fight, I'm favoring Kovalev. And the reason why I'm favoring Kovalev over Stevenson at this point is because Kovalev showed that ability to cut off the ring against Hopkins. Stevenson certainly has the equalizer. If Stevenson lands that big left hand on anyone, they're going to be in serious trouble. There's no doubt about that. Kovalev is going to be hurt if he gets hit clean with that left hand from Stevenson. And Stevenson has proven time and time again, he is absolutely lethal with that left hand in the early rounds. Lethal. You look at the Tavoris Cloud fight. He had Cloud hurt in the first round. Obviously, he knocked out Chad Dawson in the first round. He had Andre Fonfara down and hurt in the first round. The only guy recently who he didn't have hurt in the first round was Bellew, and that's because Bellew was on his bicycle. But anyone who actually stands in firing range of Adonis Stevenson early in a fight when he's sharp, I mean, yo, you better have a great defense because you don't want to get hit with that left hand. It is a serious shot. And we know that he didn't look great against Fonfara, but Fonfara had to walk through a shitstorm before he eventually started landing punches on Stevenson. Can Kovalev do that? I don't think Kovalev's as tough as Fonfara. I think Kovalev's a better fighter, a bigger puncher, better at cutting off the ring, but I don't think he's as tough as Fonfara is. That's just my suspicion. I could be wrong. But my suspicion is he won't be able to take the kind of punishment that Fonfara took, walking through that shitstorm. But because he does have better skills, because he does have a better jab, because he is better at cutting off the ring, probably has a better defense than Fonfara as well, he might be able to avoid those shots without necessarily having to take them on his gloves and arms and all that kind of stuff. He might just be able to avoid it with timing and correct distance and, you know, using his footwork correctly to cut off the ring and predict where Stevenson is going to throw that big left hand and avoid it that way. But make no mistake about it, that would be a situation where whoever lands first is going to win the fight. If Stevenson lands that big left hand on Kovalev, Kovalev's in a world of trouble and vice versa the same. The thing about Stevenson is that he is one-dimensional. Kovalev has a much more rounded skill set and much better punch variety than Stevenson has. Stevenson is really just a one-trick pony. He has that big left hand. And one thing which will be significant, though, is even though Kovalev had the longer arms than Hopkins, which surprised me, he definitely won't have the longer arms than Stevenson. Stevenson has the longest arms in the light heavyweight division at the top level other than Chad Dawson. Now, this guy has got exceptionally long arms, a 77-inch reach despite the fact he's only 5'11". Okay, very, very long arms. And he will be the sniper at long range against Sergey Kovalev. You know, Kovalev's going to have to get through that no man's land to get in range to land his own shots. And when Stevenson lets that big long left hand go, you don't want to be anywhere in the vicinity. You know, so it would be a fascinating fight, especially early on. If Stevenson don't get Kovalev out of there in the first 3 rounds, I struggle to see how Stevenson's going to survive because he is a one-trick pony. Eventually, Kovalev is going to figure out the angle of the shots. Stevenson's going to start to slow down. And that's when Kovalev's going to come in with a big devastating shots and knock Stevenson out. I can't see Stevenson going the distance. If he don't take Kovalev out in the first 3-4 rounds, Kovalev's going to take him out. And Kovalev could win in the first 3 rounds as well. First 3 or 4 rounds. But that's the window of opportunity that I see for Stevenson to win the fight against Kovalev. It has to be in the first 3 or 4 rounds. And if he doesn't take Kovalev out in the first 3 or 4 rounds, he at least has to hurt him or drop him and then have Kovalev within his shell. Have Kovalev afraid to throw punches. Okay, if he's not going to stop him in 3-4 rounds, he has to hurt him and intimidate him and contain him for the rest of the fight. That's the way I see it. So, yeah, that's I would pick Kovalev at this point, but other than Beterbiev, I would say Stevenson has the best chance against Kovalev at this particular point of the fighters I've mentioned. And as far as Kovalev moving up to cruiserweight, which some people have mentioned, nah, I don't think that'd be a good move for Kovalev. He's a decent size light heavyweight, but when you got guys that up there like Marco Huck coming down from 220, 230 pounds, nah. Yeah, that's a different beast altogether. You know, when you look at guys like Bob Foster, those of you who don't know who Bob Foster is, he's probably the most prolific puncher at light heavyweight of all time. A tremendous puncher. He was just walking through people at light heavyweight. Some people still regard him and Archie Moore as the greatest light heavyweights of all time. Archie Moore also was a tremendous puncher at light heavyweight, but Bob Foster was doing something similar to what Kovalev is doing now, but he was doing it for a much longer time period. But when Bob Foster stepped up to heavyweight to take on guys like Joe Frazier and Ali, he just got obliterated. Those fights were hardly even competitive, you know. And that's how I see Kovalev going up there against the cruiserweights, guys like, you know, Guillermo Jones and you know, Marco Huck. No way. I can't see Kovalev fighting those guys, man. Marco Huck especially. Nah, man. I don't see Kovalev being able to be having any realistic chance of beating a guy like Marco Huck. Too big, too strong, and Huck can punch as well. You know, yeah, Kovalev's punches are devastating at light heavyweight, but go up to cruiserweight, and a lot of guys up there hit harder than Kovalev. So, nah, I don't think that would be a good move. I think Kovalev should stay at 175 and just do his thing. Everyone has to come to him now. Once he gets the WBC title, I don't know how long Stevenson will run for him, or if Stevenson and Pascal fight each other, the winner, I don't know how long that guy's going to run for him, because Stevenson is still the lineal champion for whatever it's worth. He's still the lineal light heavyweight champion, so you know Kovalev wants to fight him and get that title. He's the WBC and the lineal champion. Once he gets that belt, then the world is his oyster. Everyone has to come to him. He can demand whatever purses he wants, whatever splits he wants other than mandatories, and he can just do, you know, he can live it up. So we'll see how Kovalev's career pans out. Let me know what you feel about Kovalev as a fighter, how you see him matching up against the fighters I mentioned in this video, whether you agree with me, disagree with me, it's all good. Drop your comments below. This is Hatman, I'm out.